Well, you heard the introduction. So first, I'm gonna take about the first 15 minutes here, talk about marketing, advertising, and how they work in concert with sales, but are different than sales. Ultimately, everyone who said you want to walk away from this 3-part series with a structured, a document, a notes that you could either review your current marketing plan or build your own, we'll do that. That's what I do. That's my creative that got the real job is I still find creativity in writing business plans because it's a puzzle and answer scenario for me. But before we do any of that, we have to understand some terminology, okay? So first of all, what we have to understand is marketing and advertising are cohesive but 2 separate things. Lawrence alluded to it a little bit. Advertising is the outward execution of your marketing. Marketing happens before advertising happens. Marketing and advertising happens before sales happen. But the whole thing is a circular cycle that once it all happens, it goes back to the beginning because you have to make adjustments and do it all over again. So one of the things that David and I will bounce off of each other today and over the next 2 sessions are the order you do things and then how they come back to each other, because it's a never-ending cycle. There's no such thing as doing your marketing plan and then done, right? Everything changes every day. Things work, things don't work, etc. New technology happens, new competitors show up, the market changes, we get a new president, then World War III breaks out. Whatever happens in the world is going to affect our business, and that affects our marketing, advertising, and sales approach. So I'm going to start real quick by giving you the definition, kind of a definition of advertising and marketing, unless anyone's brave enough to jump up and tell me what the definition of marketing or advertising is. I won't put you on the spot, but I'll give you bonus points if you want to jump in. Okay, I'm going to give you the dictionary.com definition. I'm going to give you the American Marketing Association's definition, and then I'm going to give you my definition, which is a lot more practical, real world, real people in a room talking about how do we get stuff done, okay? So, dictionary.com says, marketing is the action or business of promotion and selling products or services, including market research and advertising. That's a big picture thought process to what marketing is. That's pretty much wrong. So, don't pay attention to dictionary. They're wrong. The AMA, which is the American Marketing Association, so they're a lot more specific in marketing. Marketing is the activity, set of instructions, and process of creating, communicating, delivering, and exchanging offerings that have value for customers, clients, partners, and society at large. The hell does that mean? Right? Gray, technical term. Do we still know how to run our business better? No, we don't. So, I'm going to give you my definition of what marketing and advertising is. So, like I alluded to earlier, advertising is the outward execution of your marketing. Marketing is understanding who you are as a company, what your industry has available to you, the opportunity, who your competition is. These elements create your position. Position in the industry is where marketing starts and is the most important aspect of marketing, which eventually will help you make every single decision you make about advertising and sales. You have to know who you are, you have to know what you're starting with, you have to know what you have to work with, you have to know who you're competing with, and you have to know how to compete. That's positioning. So the most important aspect of a marketing plan, which is a big, huge section of a business plan, is positioning. So let me break down this important word, positioning. As you can tell, it's one of my favorite words. Along with differentiation, it's also my second favorite word. So what a position is when you get to examine, and in our second session that we'll do next month, we will break all these down in great detail, okay? So I see everyone taking notes, which makes me feel very good, but don't panic if I get going too fast. And if I talk too fast, stop me and ask me to clarify, because I get super wound up, okay? So, we start in learning what our position is by self-evaluation. What assets we have in place, what liabilities we have. And these are broad range of things. From assets are we have a great number of employees, we have a great building, we have a great product. Liabilities are we have stiff competition, or we have debt on the company, or we're new to a market. So any things that are positive, negative. These are what's called in the positioning research your SWOT analysis, or strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Sounds a little scary, but I'll break it down for you. It's real easy. Now, there's only one way to do a SWOT analysis wrong, and it's to not be 100% honest internally with yourself and with your staff. This is an internal document. This is not anything that your competition's ever going to see, or that anyone outside of your business trusted advisors are ever going to look at. So if you try to claim strengths you do not have, your marketing will fail, your advertising will fail, your sales will fail, your business will fail. So if you have a single burger shack, you're not McDonald's. You're not the biggest, and you're not the best if you have a single spot and you're not McDonald's. McDonald's, though, can't claim to have personalized service because they're McDonald's, right? So McDonald's strength is their size and scope, but they have a weakness, which is customer service, personalization, localization, etc. So every business has strengths and every business has weaknesses. If you can't be honest with yourself or a third-party advisor on your strengths and weaknesses, everything else will fail. This is the foundation of marketing, which is the foundation of your advertising, which is the foundation of your sales process. So start with an honest assessment of what your actual strengths are, what your actual weaknesses are. Next comes opportunities and threats. Opportunity is something that could be possible for you, but isn't something that you can actively go and make happen. So an opportunity would be if the city of Oklahoma City invests in a technology center, and I have clients who do technology, I have an opportunity to go over there and create opportunity for my clients. I can't create the opportunity, the technology center, and my clients can, but that's an opportunity that can come along. So knowing things that might potentially happen in your city, in your state, in your industry, that can, something you could seize upon if you've planned well for it, is an opportunity. The last piece is threats. And a lot of people in marketing kind of play with using the term threat and some other things like this. A threat is an external negative that, again, you have no control over. So a stock market crash is a threat because it can change the economy. It might change the oil industry if the stock market crashes or the commodities market crashes. You have no control over it. But you have to be aware that if it happens, you need a plan B or a plan C. So that's your SWOT analysis. That's how you know who you are and where you're at in the process, where you're beginning. You should find things that you're doing well and things that you're not doing well. The second half of this is competitive analysis. You have to do the same process, strengths and weaknesses, for your competition. Now the great thing is, they'll tell you what their strengths and weaknesses are via their advertising. If your main competitor, another winery maybe, is telling people that they have the most delicious wine, that's the strength they're leading with. If they don't ever publish their prices, then the possibility that they're more expensive could be a weakness to them. You can deduce that by doing a strategic analysis, by looking at the outward advertising and communications of your competitors. And if you really want to get fun, just walk up in there and be a customer and see what happens. If you go to another event space and try to rent a place, and they tell you they want a $10,000 deposit, which you would say, wow, that's a whole lot of money. You now know that a weakness of theirs is they want a huge deposit. And maybe you can position yourself as the place that doesn't have the huge deposit. So you can create an advantage for yourself. So, competitive analysis, and again, here is where you have to be honest with yourself. It isn't just businesses that do exactly what you do. It's businesses that compete for your economic attention. So, if you have a catering company, it's other catering companies, but it's also restaurants, it's also bakeries, it's also Andy Alligators, right? Or Whitewater, right? These are places that someone may decide to spend their party money instead of hiring a caterer. So you have to be aware that there's primary and secondary competition. So don't just think, we do A, we only compete with A. It's everyone who's competing for your economic attention. So you have your strengths and weaknesses, you're looking at your competition, what they're offering, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and then what the overall market offers you. Is your market worth $1 million a year in economic sales that you're capable of exchanging, or $100 million? Because if your industry can only generate $1 million in sales, which means 1% of $1 million, is it very much? 1% of $100 million? Pretty good, right? What it tells us when we get into budgeting is how much time and effort that you can put forward, because it's only going to return so much. So if you have a large, huge industry, I'm sure the oil industry is what, $100 billion, $500 billion, right? You have a lot of leeway on budgeting because the scope of what you can attract in that percentage is high. But something that's highly specialized, that there's only X number of dollars, you can't spend so much money on marketing that you can't ever recoup the ROI, right? So that's your competition, your market scope, who you are as a company, your strengths and weaknesses. These things all combine to tell you what your position is. Somewhere in that combination of your strengths, your competitors' weaknesses, and a potential opportunity in the market, something that someone else isn't doing in a specific way, differentiation. When you combine those things and you find something where you can lead with your strengths, goes directly against your competitors' weaknesses, or provide something no one else is providing, either in a different way, at a different cost point, in a different delivery method, etc., you can create a position for your business that you can be viable. That's the first step of writing a marketing plan. The very first step. From your position, and I'm quickly running out of time, so I'll quickly go through the next part, and in our next session, we will expand on all this. Once you understand what your position in the industry can be, you can create your tactics. Your tactics are what become your advertising. Tactics are the actual efforts put forward to deliver your position or brand message to the industry. Every industry is different, every audience is different, and every combination of delivery methods are different. That's where marketing becomes advertising, because we're executing on our position, our differentiation. We are creative execution. It becomes advertising. Your advertising does what it does in the market. Some advertising is very immediate. I need you to show up today. Some advertising is very general. Buy our product, it's really great. Hire us. Some advertising is brand centric. We're great. Because other things like word of mouth, content marketing, other things like that are happening around it. So people go, oh yeah, I've heard of them, they're great. These are levels of advertising that happens. In a perfect world, you have advertising that's happening immediately, intermediately, short-term, long-term, and brand concept. Do you understand? Do you guys ever think about why Coca-Cola markets Coca-Cola? Like, we all know Coca-Cola, right? But we occasionally have to be reminded that we like Coca-Cola. So the biggest markets, the biggest brands in the world still have to do reminder marketing and brand marketing. But we can take advantage of that as small businesses as well. Typically, we think about advertising and marketing as driving the sales today. That's short-sighted. That's chasing pennies to lose dollars. You have to have a marketing strategy that puts your offering in front of the most likely to buy audience in language that they want to hear it from, the way they want to hear it, so that when your sales team shows up, the likelihood of getting a yes is much higher. The last thing you ever want to do is advertise to everyone. It's a huge waste of money. I referenced Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola doesn't actually advertise to everyone. Apple doesn't advertise to everyone. Budweiser doesn't advertise to everyone because they can't get everyone. And none of us have enough money to try to advertise to everyone. We have to be very specific in our advertising, and our advertising will never be specific if we don't do the marketing work first. And finally, so I can bring David up, once our advertising is in the world doing what it does, it's a two-way conversation. We learn from our advertising. The advertising that works well and generates what we expected from our audience, we do more of. The things that don't do as well, we have to analyze, we do it differently or do less of it. That information comes back to the very beginning of doing your marketing plan, of who you are, what your position is in the industry. That information from your advertising also includes your sales team and the feedback that your sales team is bringing to you. And your sales team comes back and says, our advertising says we're the best prices in town, and I'm looking at people across the table and they're telling me our prices suck. So you've obviously done something wrong in your advertising because real world feedback is telling you. So now you go back to the beginning, you make those adjustments, and you do the whole thing over again. Which brings us to what happens in the sales process. So I'm going to turn it over to David now.
Thank you. Well, as you guys know, we have just a little bit of a brief amount of time to go over a couple of different things, so we're not going to try to give you too much information. I love what he said about having a feedback loop. We'll find out in most companies, the marketing department and the sales department typically are at war with each other, blaming each other on whose fault it is that there is no business. So all the leads are coming in, and that's not creating the results we want. So a couple different things. Conceptually, I want you guys to think about proactive versus reactive. Proactive versus reactive. The reason I use those two words is that in the world, when we think about any type of marketing which is generating interest, right? Generating interest. Is that proactive or is that reactive? You can answer that question. Think about it. There's no right and wrong answer. We'll come back to that in a second. But reactive or proactive?
Proactive.
Proactive. And why, Brenda? What do you think is proactive?
Because you're out there trying to get people to act toward you rather than being reactive. You're putting your information out there.
Right. But do you have any control over whether they react to that or not?
No.
Not really. So one of the struggles with this is, and one of the things I appreciate Kyle talking about having a feedback loop is that you are putting out information, putting out concepts and thoughts that you're hoping that somebody's going to react to, right? So when you think about actually developing your plan, I want you to think about that's a reactive form of marketing. And part of what you want to do is also be proactive, and that's where the marriage comes in. And it's a big deal for any one of us, because if somebody does react, the next thing that has to happen, at least in most of our businesses, is that we have to talk to a human being, right? And in that part, that's the part where things break down a lot of times. And I'm sure this does not happen to anybody in this room, but occasionally when you ask somebody about their business or what they do, they tell you everything that you never wanted to know about, whether you were just trying to be polite for a second, but that was a sign of interest, and they do some things that might not be comfortable for you, right? Make you feel uncomfortable. So I want you to think about a couple things. I'm going to give you 3 different ways that you can grow your business. I'm going to put some numbers up here. These are just for some easy ratios. Don't worry about this. This doesn't fit in your world or so forth. But if I have to talk to 100 people, we'll say in the course of a month I've got to talk to 100 people in order for me to have 20 conversations, right? I'm going to sort through those. I'm going to have 20 conversations. And if I have 20 conversations, I know in my world that I can get 10 people that will become my new customers. So again, don't let the ratios mess with you. Maybe that's bigger or smaller than how you approach things. But if I want to move this number up, and most of us I think came today because they'd like to move their numbers up, that's kind of the idea. If I want to move that to 20, what's the fastest way for me to be able to get to 20? Talk to more people, and that's what I'm almost going to say. So if I talk to 200 people, then I could potentially have 40 conversations and have 20 sales. Is that right?
No, you got to pick the right people to talk to in the first place.
I think you've got an answer there. So that's not what we want you to do. If I'm spending 40 hours, 45 hours, 50 hours talking to my 100 people, theoretically.
Try that one.
Okay, thank you. theoretically, then I don't have an extra 45 or 50 hours to talk to much more people. I'll tell you a quick story. I was a vice president for Mid-American Christian University. Somebody above my level decided that instead of 450 leads a month, which I was buying, which was about $45,000 a month in leads, that we should have a big, big month, because it was the time of year when everybody signed up, and they decided that we should get 1,200 leads. 1,200 leads. Now my team of 17 counselors is already working all the hours that they can work. If you add to me 1,200 leads, and the difference for that, so I've got another 80,000 leads or something. I mean, it was just crazy. With the difference in that spec, you would think, well, from their end, they thought, we're going to make this big investment. They spent an extra $80,000. Do you think I got more students?
No.
What happened?
You didn't have enough time to spend with everyone.
Right. How did my sales force feel?
Overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed, terrible. We are terrible. We can't close these leads. So morale goes down, closing goes down, this giant expense goes to the bottom line, everybody points at that. So having a conversation with marketing before we make some of these decisions and who we're going to talk to. So one of the things that we can do is if we have that conversation, one of the things we talked about is focusing on who your customer is. We can talk to more of the right people. If I talk to more of the right people, have the right conversations, I can be more effective in how many people I'm going to actually talk to. And so if I'm talking to more of the right people, I'm going to get a better number of better conversations. So I can control that part. That's in my control. The other thing I can control, proactive part, is I control the quality of my conversations. This is one of the biggest challenges for sales folks because a lot of us got into something because we're passionate. We work with a ton of nonprofits and for-profits, but they are frustrated with the time, energy, money that they spend trying to grow their business in one way, shape, or another, and nothing seems to be happening. They're going to events and going to certain things, but nothing's happening. A lot of times it's because the conversations that they're having are just clones of the conversations that they have in people around them. I'll sit in rooms sometimes when people introduce themselves and what they do, I can just kind of put a label right there on their head, because all they did is tell me what they do. And that's not beginning a conversation. So what we want to do is have some better conversations. Because we have kind of a short schedule today, I brought a list of concepts that I'm going to share with you guys. Maybe, I don't know, we pass out a few of those here. You guys can just kind of pass it around your table for a second. But the idea here is just simply, here's a few hacks for me to have better conversations. A few hacks for me to have better conversations. Conceptually, I want you guys to think about high school for just a second. Some of us, that's further back than others. I grew up in Huntington Beach, California, and we had the quad. When people went to the quad, they hung out in groups. And you had the geeks over here, and you have the theater people over here, we got the jocks over here, and the mentally gifted monkeys, I think they called these ones over here. You guys remember that scene? We have a tendency to hang out with people that are like us. It's just how we're wired. We also have a tendency to trust people that we like. We have a tendency to buy from people that we trust. That means we have a tendency to buy from people who are like us. All of us are wired a little bit differently. And so if somebody approaches me, and the way that I'm wired is I'm kind of an introvert, and I like to kind of think things through, and I'm a slow decision maker. These aren't good or bad traits, it's just the way I'm wired. So if the guy that comes over to me is a big salesperson, they got that big salesperson personality and says, Malaya, I just want to tell you about my stuff because it's so amazing. Do you want to just, everybody at this table who's whacked like that's like, get me out of this place, right? But if I have no awareness that how I approach that person needs to be different than the person who's got the big hands and who does talk like that, and that we have instant camaraderie, why can't everybody be like this person? Because they're right, right? We don't see our own blind spots sometimes in the way that we communicate with other people. And that can be the way that their hardwiring is. You guys think about your mom, your dad, your brothers, your cousins, your husbands and wives. Are you wired the same? Not hardly ever, right? Got some definite differences, but if we don't take that into account when we actually try to connect to somebody, is that going to be comfortable? Is that going to be uncomfortable? You know, if I came over and you were that introvert, this illustration, Will we be moving closer together or further apart? Further apart. Way far apart. Run for the hills far apart, right? If you're a detailed person, and I'm a quick decision maker that's kind of a demanding, like, I gave you 3 bullet points. If you can't make a decision, you're just stupid. You guys know that person? All right. And if you're a detailed person, is that going to satisfy you? No, you're going to say, you know what, you've been so helpful. And I'm going to just think this over. And I just appreciate your time so much. And I'm sure I'll be giving back to you as I think this over. Anybody ever get any think it overs in their lives? We just think it's because they're going to think it over? A lot of times on the front side, we don't do our work. We're not aware of how we actually can be connected. People buy from people that are like them. How do I adjust myself? It's not their job to adjust to me. How do I adjust myself so I can be more effective with them? I want you to think about 3 different elements of communication. One of the things are these things that come out of my mouth. They're called words, right? But if we measure what component words are of our communication, according to the experts, about 7 to 9%. 7 to 9%. How much time do you spend on the words when you want to talk to somebody about what you do? Thinking about it, going over it, thinking about it in my mind. It's huge to us, but how much of the actual communication is it? The largest portion of that, and I've got it on your notes there, is body language. 55% of how we are perceived and how we communicate. Aaron didn't share.
He's not communicating well.
That's it. Well, I probably didn't communicate with him to share that too. So I want you to think about that. 55% of what we're communicating, we communicate with our body language. When you guys walked into this room today here, you did it subconsciously. This is not stuff that's going on in our conscious. This is subconsciously. You made an evaluation of the people that are here. They look good today, they're good, I don't know who that person is. They, I don't like what they're wearing, I do like what they're wearing. Whatever it was, you made judgments subconsciously about that person in this room. Can I do something about my body language? Am I in control of that?
Yeah.
That's proactive. Do you follow me the difference here? I'm not waiting for somebody to phone ring. I can do what I do better. I can have better conversations with people. I can choose my tonality. Have you ever been offended by a salesperson's tone? Raise your hand if you have. Yeah. Do you think anybody's ever been offended by yours? Lawrence got both hands up. You bet. But how much time do we actually take to work on those things so that we get better at that? I can spend all the money and get my 1,200 leads and try to talk to those folks, but if I'm not having the right conversation, there's going to be a breakdown. Because of the way we try to communicate with people sometimes, it comes off as a conflict. If I want you to know how great my stuff is because it's awesome, that's not a conversation. So how do we have better conversations? 5 minutes? Thank you. Active body listening, or active listening techniques. I want you guys to think about this a little bit because this is such a rare thing in our lives. Some of you, by nature and by wiring, are good listeners. And people love you. And they seem like they seek you like a magnet, and they will talk to you forever. Of course, they'll tell you what a great listener they are, so they go on talking about how great a listener they are, right? But I want you to think about that real process. All of us in this room want to be heard. We want to be understood. Period. It's like a basic component of human need. Now, in your life, when you think about salespeople, do you think about someone that hears and understands you? They care about you? They're just ching-ching, how soon can we get the ching-ching going? That may not be here, and that may not be the heart of you. But if you're just waiting for your opportunity to talk, which is kind of how we listen, right? Matter of fact, there's some different types of listening. There's people that are combative listeners. You have that person that's in your life, no matter what you say. Oh, I thought that the ride up here from Dallas was great. Well, yeah, but they got those cracks in the road, and they got this and that, and they complain about this, or you say, I think that the State of the Union address was great. Oh, it's the worst thing I ever saw in my life. Whatever it was, it's exactly opposite. And there's some people that's just their nature. There's also people that are competitive. Hey, I went to Hawaii on my vacation. I had a fantastic time. Oh, why? That's great. Yeah, we went there on our 20th anniversary. We did Hawaii, we did Kauai, we did the island, we did the helicopter, we sailed around the island twice and took a rocket to the moon. They have to updo whatever it is that you said that you've done. You've had those conversations. Or it's the other way, it's bad. I got a little tipsy last night, but I'll do that again. Oh, I was falling down drunk, I landed in the planter last night. It's always got to be a one-up story. Think about this. Here's what happens sometimes when we do this. We want to connect to somebody. So they start talking, like I'm a big sailor, I love to sail. So they start talking about sailing. And you can almost see me kind of bounce on my toes. Because as soon as they take a breath, what am I going to do? I'm going to connect with them and tell them about sailing. I love to sail. And I'm going to go off for an hour. This has happened to all of us. Thinking I'm bonding. When I just jumped down that person's throat of something they were trying to share with me. So 3 things. Eye contact. Look at the person you're talking to so they know that you're listening. Say back to them what they said. Rephrase it, paraphrase it back to them. Just take that statement and say it back to them. If somebody says back to you what you're saying, do you think that they're listening? Thank you. I said
your
that
time.
too. Yeah. They know that you're listening. And that's gargantuan. It helps people feel comfortable. It helps them feel okay. We talked about a little bit of a process that Kyle was talking about. There's a process for sales. I want you guys to think about between now and the next time we get together, what's your process? Everything in our business has a process. But virtually everybody I talk to in sales, nada. I just kind of get in there and I kind of react. I'm good on my feet and I try to do some stuff. If you don't have a process, how successful are you being? And how much control do you have over that? You're 100% control of that. You're not waiting for something to happen. You're 100% control of that. So we've got a little bit of time here, and Kyle and I both are open for any questions that you guys have. We didn't cover everything. We have a short spot for here, but I want to leave you a little bit of something to take with you that at least today when you're talking to your spouse or kids, you can practice some of these things. Anybody want to practice active listening? Anybody like somebody to practice active listening with them? Right? It'd be pretty amazing we can find those people that are out there. What questions do you guys have?
Don't be shy. Come on, we're all friends.
One of the things that I heard, I swear it's not a plant. I learned too. I think it's like cheating because I get to do all this stuff. Neither you nor you talked about money. And that's good, because in one way that means maybe it's something I can afford, but the bigger thing is time.
Whenever I refer to anything that's budget, it's economics, it's money, but it's also time and attention and effort, right? Several people in a room, right? One person shop, you got 100 things to do, you don't have time. So you could spend, you could pay someone $10,000 to do your marketing. It's easy, write them a check. But if you can't afford that, you're going to spend the time, right? You don't want a single minute of that time to be wasted. Whether it's ineffective or done wrong, but it's not, obviously a $10,000 check you don't want to be wasted. But you don't want 10 minutes of your time to create a Facebook post or to write something down to put in an ad to be wasted. So that, at the end of the day, time and money and effort are the same thing as budget. And when we go through a budget process, when we build our system, it is putting priority on things because you will spend time or money or effort on all those things. So everything you do, you want to be effective and efficient, and the best way to do that is the system.
Absolutely agreed. And in our system, and Lawrence, you're familiar with this, but what we typically do is we save all of the hard stuff to the end. How much does it cost? What's it going to take? What's my final thing that I actually get if I say yes? We put so much pressure and stress and stigma on our client and ourselves for the close that it becomes a conflict situation. Really, when you talk about money, money should be talked about before we ever talk about what the deliverable is. Because if somebody's not going to be able to do business with you because they don't have money, do you want to know now or do you want to know 6 months from now? I don't know now.
It's also why you don't market to everyone. Your marketing has to be very specific so that that conversation is already, you've already gone from 100 people that you need to talk to to 20 pre-qualified because your marketing actually turns some people off. This is the hardest thing for small business people to wrap their head around is, I want everyone to love us and know our brand and know what we do. No. If they're never going to do business with you, or refer someone, or be somewhere in the chain of getting someone to do business with you, do you care if they see your marketing? Do you care if they like your product? Does Mercedes try to advertise to people who can't afford their cars? Why would they? Right? So that's where marketing and sales come together in this pre-qualification, and the conversation should start at that pre-qualification, not in the pre-qualification.
Our greatest commodity, our most valuable commodity is time. A lot of us spend time trying to follow up on leads that are never going to turn into any business because we're swimming in the wrong pond. We haven't taken the time to do some analysis in our marketing and our direction so that we can be proactive in the right places. And that makes a gigantic difference, obviously, in what your outcomes are if you're spending time in the right places. It takes some thought for that to happen.
If you've done this part right, if you've done your marketing, you understand who you are, your competition, your opportunity, if your sales team is listening to what your audience is telling you, then you're going to get the right client with the highest potential. Being ready to say no is the next hardest thing for the salesperson, right? You're in the room, they've been pre-followed, they've got so far, and now they want the Mercedes for $50. No. Why? Because we, business owners, lose money on that transaction. And too many small business owners look at, well, it's cash flow. Well, I need to sell today, right? But you put yourself in a negative spot. If you use this process, if you're structured well, if you know how much you need to make to say yes, and it's not about taking people's heads off, and it's not about so I can get rich quick, it's so that your business can profit. Every business has to profit. Too many people these days demonize profit. They act like profit and greed are the same thing. It's not the same thing because is anyone's business perfectly always the same? No, right? It's this, right? It's this, right? How do we survive this? Profit. We're up here. So, pre-qualify, listen to what they're telling you, and then when the relationship isn't right, or their offer is wrong, we say no. All of that information goes back to our feedback loop of we're getting the wrong offers, we're approaching the wrong people, our message isn't getting the right people in the door. Because even if they're pre-qualified and they want to offer us $50 for our $50,000 Mercedes, we've done something wrong in the process, right? We would rather learn that 2 minutes into the conversation or 40 minutes into the conversation. First 2 minutes.
That's based on your conversation. So in kind of summary, because I think we're kind of here at time, basically on the front side of our business, that's our marketing, right? That's what generates interests. That's part of it. I can be proactive and do things personally to generate things. When I did this type of a closing ratio, I pay $100 to $150 per lead. We have about a 5% closing ratio. I spend a lot of money to get students for the school. If I had a referral, instead of closing at 5%, referral closed at 40%. You know what my cost on a referral was? It was zero. Right? So when you think about your business and you think about the fact that I don't like asking for people to refer us to this sale, that maybe you just need to know how to say it better. Maybe you need to learn how to actually ask for a referral where that person, just like you would, if you knew somebody that was good, somebody would appreciate knowing about that person, you would help them by introducing them. And people feel that way about you. But if you're not asking that in a way where they can actually take that to heart and be effective with that, our conversations are huge. Yes, I need to attract somebody to me, but as soon as it hits the human person, it's all about our conversations, our capacity to do that well. And so, what are you doing to make yourself better in having those better conversations? So, there's processes for doing that. One of the biggest things we help people with, because if you're not comfortable, if you're an introvert, you're not comfortable talking to people, but if you give somebody a process, a lot of times like, oh my God, I've got an actual tool to do that, and we'll be sharing our processes as we go forward on this too. Maybe help make those a little bit more comfortable.
At the end of the day, it isn't about getting a customer or client, it's the right customer, the right client, providing them what they need, the way we provide what we do, that creates a relationship, can be ongoing, repeat, because the most cost-effective, the most efficient, the most profitable client is an existing client.
Keeps coming back.
That's right. And that's where your referrals come to as well. So it's all a cycle if you pay attention.
Good deal.